In this video today, Joy Reid has responded publicly to her show being canceled. She breaks down in tears. Also, the Democratic Party is hit with another major setback as new polling shows overwhelming support for President Trump. We're going to get to all of that in this video, but let's hear what Joy Reid had to say.
My show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And this is kind of like being on TV, so I apologize. And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life, and defended them.
All right, so she continues to go on and on and on about how proud she was of her show, which is to be expected. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to say. I'm not actually laughing or celebrating the fact that she was crying or anything like that. I am celebrating the fact that the network is getting smart. Networks are in the trash. We know that. 2, hateful rhetoric that her show definitely was spewing on a daily basis is no longer good for business. We know that. Number 3, people on her side of things, they're calling this a racist move. Now, I just want to address that really quick. She's being replaced by 2 African Americans. So you tell me how that's racist. I mean, it's just laughable the way that progressives think. And that's why new polling continues to show how bad it is for Democrats. Before we show you the numbers, let's hear what President Trump had to say about it.
Harvard poll that came out that had, thank you very much. The Harvard poll that came out had you up 9+ points, and all of your agenda that you ran on, you're accomplishing that. You got the support of the American people, including stopping the war in Ukraine. If you can comment on the latest Harvard poll, I appreciate that.
Well, I was honored by it. It was a big poll, and it's usually a poll that leans on the other side of things, the other side of the world, so to speak. But the Harvard poll is a respected poll, and it has us not only leading, but leading by a lot, and leading on every single issue that we've talked about. And as I said, we've become the party of common sense. And I think that's a very important element now, common sense, because what's happening in the world and even in this country, some of the things that took place, many of them are now canceled, and the rest are being canceled as we speak. But we've moved very rapidly and I think very effectively. So I was honored by that poll. Thank you very much.
Now, I'm just going to get to the bottom line with the numbers, and 3 of them that really stand out and I believe spells disaster for the Democratic Party. This was actually posted by Libs of TikTok, and the actual poll, which you can look it up yourself, is called the Harvard Caps Harris poll. And by the way, I did a little bit of research on them. They were just as bad as all the rest of them during the election. They had Kamala Harris winning, but they did acknowledge that Trump would win the battleground state. So I'll give them credit there. Now, here are those 3 numbers. The first one is 72% support a government agency focused on efficiency. 77, which is the second number, support a full review of all government spending. And here's the third number. 69% support cutting $1 trillion in government spending. What's the bottom line here? This means that what Elon Musk is doing is the right thing and that most Americans agree. Now, the problem, though, is they may not agree with the messaging, some of the stuff that he posts on X, or some of the rhetoric. And I know they definitely don't agree with the backlash and the meltdowns from the Democratic Party themselves over this. So all in all, this is great news for President Trump, bad news for Democrats. Now, here's Frank Luntz, who went on to CNN and provided his opinion about what these numbers really mean and how Americans see what Trump is doing.
Why I wanted to do this interview is to explain one thing to your viewers. The overall objectives and the goals and the general policies behind what's been happening is approved of. The way it's being communicated to the American people, no, they don't want a chainsaw brought to the government. They don't want this seeming meanness as part of public policy. They do want the objectives. They do want less waste, less fraud, and most importantly, less corruption. And so they back the president and his administration generically on what he's trying to do. But the language and the communication, the messaging is over the top. And the public understands that these are real people with real families and real concerns. They're not seeking chaos. They're seeking an orderly change of the way things are. The Democrats are wrong by talking about resistance because the public doesn't want resistance. They simply want these things done efficiently, effectively, and with accountability. And so it's still anyone's game who's going to be successful.
Yeah. So the only thing I actually agree with him on is that the American people support what Trump is doing. That is just the bottom line. And I think it's a fine line that Democrats, including the media, and even Republicans are going to have to walk, which is how much time are you going to spend crying about the way Elon Musk and Trump is going about this versus the fraud that they've been identifying, the wasteful spending that they're cutting out, or the results that Trump is going to deliver that may be positive or negative. That's why you guys hear me say all the time, results tell the story. Democrats are prematurely judging Trump based on results, which we have none to really judge yet. And let me show you an example how bad it is. So on MSNBC, their own legal analysts made them go quiet because he had to tell them the truth about Democrats suing the Trump administration.
Over the weekend, I read all these headlines, and the headlines were like, Trump suffers legal blows. Another one was Trump get hit with unexpected loss. Here was one, major DEI legal setback. And I think the concern I have is that people watching those headlines, especially people who don't like Trump, are going to think Trump is getting his butt kicked. And then when he wins invariably, he's going to win some of these cases. They're going to say, well, what happened to all the butt kicking, right? Yeah. And here's why. These are not major setbacks. First reason, we are at the stay stage. In other words, in almost all of these cases, the court is issuing a stay. That is a pause. By definition, it is not on the merits. Nobody's winning or losing on the merits. They're hitting the pause button until they can decide the case on the merits. And by the way, just like Danielle said, all of this is exhibition games or friendlies, as they say in soccer. Yeah. They don't count. They don't count until they get to the last court they get to, which in most cases, because they're of unique constitutional issues, is going to be the Supreme Court. So these are not blows to the Trump administration. I don't see them that way. The other thing, and again, Danielle brought this up, the Trump administration totally expects they're going to lose in court a lot. Do you know what it costs to do an executive order? A piece of paper and a Sharpie. That's it. And they can go right back to the drawing board.
Now, let me ask you a serious question here and put your answer in the comment section. When's the last time you heard someone on that network, MSDNC, make a common sense driven point? Think about that. Now, of course, he's a legal analyst, and I'm going to give him credit here because I think that's the first time I actually heard, when you're talking about mainstream media, someone describe what's happening with these lawsuits in this way. So kudos to him. Now, did you see their facial expressions? I mean, they had nothing to say. I mean, it gets worse here, by the way. I mean, you're going to have to see the host's face because he looks sick as he continues to pile on about the brutal reality.
One of these courts said, hey, the language was too vague. You know what that tells them? Just go draft another one. It's not like legislation where you need a bunch of people to agree on something. It is a pen and a piece of paper, and that's it. As much as I came here and I thought, well, these headlines really don't tell the whole story, I wonder, Danielle, you might be with me on this to some degree because you made a lot of the points that I had to make. I do not see this as Trump losing over and over and over again. I think the more important, bigger story is that they're not going to stop and they're going to keep fighting it every turn, and they are going to win some of these.
I think the biggest takeaway that you must understand about what's happening here is that President Trump has had years to prepare for this administration. And that's why Democrats, they don't know how to react. They're all over the place. So, of course, the administration is prepared to go to court on a lot of these executive orders, but they have one thing that Democrats don't. They have the support of the American people to do something different, because whatever we've been doing in the past doesn't work. And that's why this next story is fitting, because President Trump understands that concept. Let's stop doing what we've been doing if we want to get different results. That's why Dan Bongino is now the deputy director of the FBI. We talked about it last night as soon as it came out. And now today, the reactions are rolling in, and there's a lot of people losing their mind. And so that's what I want to take a look at first. And so here is what CNN had to say.
It's not a job that requires Senate confirmation. Not that given what we have seen with all of the other nominees, it probably wouldn't have been an issue. But the point is that he can go right in.
Right. And is. And to call him just a conservative commentator really sugarcoats this story. Dan Bongino used to be a Secret Service agent, and he transitioned into this media job. He actually ran for Congress 3 times and failed. So he went down this really profitable route of being a right-wing bomb-throwing host. He was on Fox News for a while, then he left Fox, and now he's at Cumulus Radio, hosting a daily podcast. You know, he hawks gold on the show, he promotes conspiracy theories, he calls liberals evil, and back in 2020, he played a key role in promoting Trump's big election lies. So this is not someone who's, just out there, gently promoting the Trump agenda. No, he is an incendiary figure, someone, as the New York Times said, a misinformation super spreader. And that makes you think about, as he comes into the FBI, how will he perform? What reality will he acknowledge? What reality will he recognize in this job?
Now, what people need to understand is Dan Bongino is not just some commentator, okay? He's one of the top in his field. That's number one. Number two, he is a former Secret Service agent. He has served at law enforcement. He understands exactly what this moment is all about. And under the leadership of Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, and President Trump, I think he's going to be successful. Now, of course, people on the left don't see it that way. We know that. And he has been very effective at calling out the hypocrisy and the misinformation from individuals on the left. And that's why they're sick because of this announcement.
And then there's Dan Bongino, someone who has never spent a day working at the FBI, but will now be the deputy director. Ken, tell us about Bongino's background and what kind of reaction we're seeing to this pick.
Well, the most important thing to know about his background is that, as you said, he hasn't worked at the FBI. This is a job that for 117 years has been held by a career FBI agent because this person is actually in charge of operations at a very complex law enforcement agency. Dan Bongino was a former Secret Service agent, but he's better known for being a right-wing podcaster, a very successful podcaster who has spouted conspiracy theories. Most recently, Anna, he claimed that the FBI was lying when they said they didn't know who placed the pipe bombs outside the RNC and the DNC the day before the January 6th attacks. The FBI came out with a big information push to try to get more info from the public. They said they were seeking information about suspects. Bongino did a podcast where he said, no, they really know who did it. This is all a cover-up. But look, I can just tell you, there is real consternation bordering on horror from the FBI people I'm talking to about this appointment because of his beliefs and because he has no background in the FBI.
And this is what I had to say in response to that criticism is this. The traditional way has failed the FBI because approval ratings are at an all-time low. You can't dispute that. Secondly, just maybe doing things differently this time will produce better results. That's my mindset about this entire administration. Is it unorthodox? Absolutely. Are there people being nominated for positions that we normally, traditionally would not see? Absolutely. However, when we're living in a time where the American people demand results, we got to think outside the box and bring in people who think that way as well. Now, let's move to someone who also thinks outside the box. This is Elon Musk. Remember, we already discussed it. He sent an email over the weekend demanding federal workers to respond back, telling him what they did over the past week, 5 things. And of course, the media was trying to create some level of division between him and the agency heads and President Trump. Clearly, Trump did not take the bait. And I'm going to show you some clips about what he had to say about it. But first, hear the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, support this actual move. Watch.
I have no problem with the employees here saying, what did you do last week? And if you can't come up with 5 things that you did, maybe you shouldn't be employed here. So again, this is an easy task. It happens in the private sector all the time. And so I wanted our employees to actually engage and talk about what they did. And I think this whole movement, Bill, is potentially going to make people go, I'm going to come to work earlier. I'm going to stay later. I'm going to look at what Donald Trump wants me to accomplish because he won the election. And I'm going to fight and work to make sure I help him accomplish that because I'm a public servant. I don't work for a party or a union or a think tank. I actually work for the president. And again, I think this goes to that point. Just tell us what you did last week.
Now, what I'm going to do is show you a clip about what President Trump had to say this morning as he's having this meeting with Macron in regards to their relationship and what's happening with Ukraine. But he makes it very clear why this email was genius and what it was really all about. Take a look.
Do you think that DOJ could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency heads then told people to ignore it, but Elon Musk...
about the last email that was sent? where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great. Because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And, you know, where's all that? Where's the money going? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far, and we've just started.
So let's just, for the sake of debating this, half of everything that he just said is true, okay? That means there are people out there, I don't care what the percentage is, but they exist, federal workers getting paid with taxpayer money, but they're not showing up to work, right? They're not in person. They're not efficient. They are wasting our dollars. Yeah, I think American people overwhelmingly want to get that out. We showed you what the poll numbers were at the beginning of this video. So I think it's actually, again, thinking outside the box. Now, he also addressed, again, the new hoax in a sense that the media was trying to drum up, which is there's a beef between Elon Musk and the agency heads. Here's what Trump had to say.
Some of the agency heads instructed their employees not to respond because they were waiting on further guidance. But Elon Musk's tweet said a failure to respond would be taken as a resignation. So there's been a disconnect in communications. Yeah. Are you concerned at all about that?
No. That was done in a friendly manner. Only things such as perhaps Marco at State Department where they have very confidential things, or the FBI where they're working on confidential things. And they don't mean that in any way combatively with Elon. They're just saying there are some people that you don't want to really have them tell you what they're working on last week. But other than that, I think everyone thought it was a pretty ingenious idea. We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too. So, you know, we're doing a real job. And we just had a poll come out, I guess the Harvard poll, saying that it's massively popular what we're doing.
So again, guys, there's a fine line between trying to quarterback everything that the Trump administration is doing and actually just focus on what the results are and what they should be for the American people. And again, that's the way that I think. I just want to focus on the results. And right now, I am not ready to judge the Trump administration on anything. I think they need 6 months. Give them at least 6 months before we definitively say it's all bad or it's all good. Now, we know through the polling, he's headed in the right direction. The American people overwhelmingly support what he's doing. That's what we know for a fact at this moment. Now the better question here is why is there so much backlash in regards to answering the questions that was in the email? Why is it so hard or so rude or cruel to ask a federal employee, what did you do last week? Well, that's exactly what Congressman Ralph Norman also spoke about. Watch.
Focusing on the bigger picture, shouldn't federal workers that have their job because of our taxpayer dollars be able to find 5 simple things that they did at work in the last week?
Well, Todd, you know, if you look at this, there are roughly 3 million federal workers. The price tag that the taxpayers pay is right at $271 billion a year. Is it too much to ask for them to verify why they're making an average salary of $106,000 a year? Do you think in the private sector that single mom who is working 2 jobs at a restaurant can't justify where she was, or the hygienist at the dentist's office can't verify what, you know, how many patients they saw? The absurdity and I guess the arrogance of the workers who says that's a heavy lift is what's wrong with that's what the Americans are sick and tired of. It's not their money. We're the ones who are paying the bills. We have a right to know. And Elon Musk is, you know, the numbers don't lie on what he's finding out.
Now, the insightful thing about everything that's taken place is if we remove the emotions and we look at what's actually happening here, we have the genius of our time, the richest man, and his crew, by the way, people that he's recruited, who are probably some of the smartest software engineers or coders in America, inside federal government systems, trying to do what? transform it so it's now efficient and it's not operating like we're back in the 1950s. Now, here's what Speaker Mike Johnson had to say about DOGE and how they are transforming the federal government's system.
And the Congress, we could have oversight. The problem is, for decades, as we know, we haven't been able to do that job well, because even though we requested the data and requested the insight, it was hidden. How many of you know that bureaucracy was not forthcoming, right? They're not transparent. That's the whole point. That's the problem. That's the deep state we talk about. So they were hiding from Congress. We didn't know that USAID was funding drag shows in Peru or whatever, transgender operas in Colombia or whatever, and it's madness. But Elon has cracked the code. He is now inside the agencies. He's created these algorithms that are constantly crawling through the data, and as he told me in his office, the data doesn't lie. We're going to be able to get the information. We're going to be able to transform the way the federal government works at the end of this, and that is a very exciting prospect. It is truly a revolutionary moment for the nation.
Politics is going to overshadow that accomplishment because we all know the government is not efficient whatsoever. The only thing they're efficient at is wasting money. There's no question about that. And so by Elon Musk going in there and updating these systems, and they're going to cry, well, he has access to the data. Listen, so many people have access to the data. Let's stop it, all right? And by the way, this is being reported that it's going to be done with the air traffic control systems. This is groundbreaking. It doesn't matter whether you like the man or hate the man, but you can't argue with his genius. You can't argue with the results that he's been able to already deliver for America without even being in politics. Now, because you guys know I like to show you both sides of the argument, here is another federal worker going on CNN and demanding your sympathy.
First, just tell us about this email and what it was like receiving it and what you all have talked about after getting it.
Sure. I got this email Saturday afternoon, about 3 p.m., and I felt absolutely infuriated getting this email with a demand within 48 hours to provide a response on what I did within the last week or face termination. This is clearly an attempt from Elon Musk to harass and bully and intimidate the federal workforce, which is part of his broader plan to gut the federal workforce and privatize public sector services to ensure that corporations like his own can get more profit. And that makes me really angry, and my coworkers as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I understand. See, the American people are the ones who are actually angry about the wasteful spending, and a lot of federal workers just so happen to be a part of that. And what I mean by that exactly, we're spending too much money. I mean, you're talking $250 billion on the federal workforce. And what do we get in return exactly? An air traffic control system that's out of date, bridges that are not being built in an appropriate amount of time, high rail systems like the one in California that can't be completed, a failed infrastructure as it pertains to internet and cellular access in rural areas, long wait times when you call the IRS or any of these other agencies. What is the American people exactly getting in return? And I think we need to do something different if we want different results in our country. This leads me to the question of this entire video, actually. Do you believe we have a legitimate chance to transform the federal government in a way that we've never seen in history? We're talking the technology, the infrastructure, the way it gathers information, the wait times, the air traffic control system, agencies. Do you believe Trump is going to be able to make that happen in this administration? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, last night we did a video on Dan Bongino becoming the deputy director of the FBI. As soon as that news came out, I showed a clip of how demoralized MSNBC was. If you didn't see that for yourself, you're going to want to look at it. All you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.